nice to be here. I was here on Monday. Yes, I am an outside person, so I only know when anyone tells me. So if I ever don't address something, because someone hasn't told me yet. So if you want to talk about something specific, you got to bring it in, and I only know what people tell me. But I'm happy to be here. Was anybody at the HDR session that we did last month with NorCal? NorCal's IDE, or like DEI group did a session. It was virtual. Was anybody?
I called in.
Yeah, called in. Yeah. It was in person for some people who were in Olive Creek and then able to be called in. So I was there for that. I'm here now to really have a conversation. The survey, a lot of folks filled out that pre-session survey, and that's how I got a lot of the information that I'm using for today. And so thank you for that. It only went to me. I'm the only person that saw it. I don't know anybody enough to identify anyone, so when I mean it was anonymous, it definitely was, so I appreciate it. But today, the purpose of today, on a very rainy end of a Monday, because like it feels amazing outside, doesn't it? No, it's terrible. I don't know if anyone's from anywhere else, but I'm a true California girl. Do not appreciate this at all, okay? At all. All right, so this is what we're doing today. Today, there's introduction stuff. These are rough timelines, but for the most part, I come into organizations and I help organizations have conversations with each other. It's really not for me to like do a lot of teaching, do any of that kind of stuff. I'm mostly here to kind of get us up. It's a smaller space. We are going to move around a bit, and you guys are going to talk to each other, and that's what we're doing today for the next couple of hours. We're going to look at defining what your culture of belonging is as a group, so that we can take all of the information that whatever somebody wants to share here in this space, and we can get it up and move towards defining what that actually means, and then talk about how to build it, right? Some things of how to build it. We only have a couple hours, so we can't do everything, but we'll do as much as we can. My name is Krystina Jackson. I am the founder and CEO of Converge Consulting Group. The idea of Converge is really to take the ideas, it's based in equity and belonging, and really find the point of convergence in whatever organization I'm in. What belonging looks like at any organization is different because you guys have your own culture, and I can never be an expert of the culture that you have here. I'm not from architecture, I'm not from engineering, oh my gosh. I do have a degree in chemistry if anybody likes that. But other than that, I don't have that. So I'm really not here to like be an expert or inform on culture, right? That is here. But what I do want to do is help to facilitate conversations that allow for belonging so that you all can define that for yourselves, right? So these are some people on our team that we also work with. Travis Jackson is here as well. These are some of the people that we've worked with. I do learning and development as well. I'm a former educator, former chemistry educator. I develop trainings and these sort of learning experiences for a lot of different organizations. And so today, what we're doing, and I come in with like this energy because like I'm a classroom teacher, so apologies in advance. Hopefully you're okay with that, because I definitely like write things, say things, talk to things, because like I'm a classroom teacher. When I spoke with the IDE team here in particular, there were some things that were concerning, things that, and I'm not concerning to me, not like I heard it and I was like, oh my gosh. Things that were concerns shared with me, most of which have been stated, all of which have been stated already. And so my question was, what would it look like to have an experience for you all that could get you guys ready and energized and inspired, honestly, and empowered to foster the culture of belonging that you guys want? So I'm really here to help you guys get what you want, which is to figure out how to address some of the things that have come up, some of the things that came up in the survey, some of the things that have come up in other conversations, and really get to that place to where this unit feels like a cohesive group. Now, I will say that it may not be true that everybody in here feels like it's not cohesive. I'm sure there are people that feel like it is. And I'm sure there are people that feel like there aren't. The goal is like for the people who is and the people who aren't to be in the same page. And if you are and is, right, to be able to hear the people who aren't, right? And if you're an aren't, build connections with people who is. That's the goal, right? So everything we're gonna do is is about conversations that we're gonna have. And I like to start off with this, is a lot of times in conversations we talk about a safe space. In these sorts of conversations, culture conversations, belonging, those sort of things, safety assumes there's gonna be no risk and no hurt. I can never promise that in any kind of conversation. For the most part, no one, I've never had anyone like walk out angry or have this horrible experience, you know, never so far. Please don't be my first, okay? But what I can say is that if we establish that this is a brave space, then we're recognizing the vulnerability that's required to say some things that maybe you haven't said out loud. Does that make sense? And it doesn't mean either that this is like an inherently risky thing, but I like to hold space for the fact that when you get a bunch of people in a room like this and then you have somebody like me in front of it and I'm like, hey, we're gonna talk about culture, and then you're like, some people are like, I don't know, right? That's fair. You don't have to know. You don't know who I am and you might not trust me, and there's all sorts of things happening in this room at the moment, right? So being brave is what's gonna be required for all of us to like get over that hurdle. So we're gonna own our intention and our impact, right? When we say things, we're gonna focus on ourselves. So this whole session is the power of one. So when we talk about culture, there's a lot of things that are sort of systemic issues that come up, right? So in the 2 hours, what I can tell you is like, this isn't gonna be a conversation necessarily about hiring practices or things like that. Things that require policy changes or systemic changes or whatever the case may be, right? Those are different conversations, targeted conversations. The purpose here is to say, what do I do and how do I show up and how can I show up in support of my colleagues? That's the question. How can I show up every day in support of my colleagues? How can I figure out where they need my support? How can I lend that support? How can I ask for that support? I, which normally we're like, focus on others. I is selfish. Today, be selfish about what you can do, right? Be selfish. Okay, so first I want to give you a title, a definition, 2 definitions before we get to the meat of what we're doing, or this first activity that we're doing. So as it relates to the word, to the feeling of belonging, this is the definition. Belonging, a feeling of being happy or comfortable as a part of a particular group and having a good relationship with the other members of the group because they welcome you and accept you. How do we feel about that definition of belonging? Thoughts? Anything particularly like stands out to you with this definition? Anything you like about it in particular? Happy, yeah.
I like how you combined happy or comfortable.
Yeah.
Because you may not be happy, but you may be comfortable with the situation.
Right. Yeah.
I think the last part is, I guess, ask questions about what does it mean to be accepted.
Yes. What does it mean to be accepted? What does it mean to be welcomed? Who defines what it means to be accepted?
Each individual.
Yes. You yourself.
You define that, right? So what's interesting about that, if I say I don't feel accepted, does anyone really have latitude to tell me whether or not that's true? No. Because whether or not someone feels accepted is defined by them. And sometimes it is hard. So sometimes when we have this conversation, on the one hand, I have people that really, really understand it. On the other hand, I have people that are immediately like, wait a minute, because there are some people that have some really high expectations of other human beings. Yeah? And I don't understand how I'm really not cool with the idea of being in a place where they define what feels accepting to them, and then I just have to submit to that, right? In every single moment, because they have to find what acceptance means, and they have the latitude to change the rules when they want, and then when the rules get changed and I'm not aware of them, then I'm not being accepted. Can anyone relate to that a little bit? That fear? It's a fear. So what do we do with that? What do we do with it? Well, first, you have boundaries about what you're gonna do and what you wanna do, what you're willing to do, and those sorts of things. The second thing is you also understand that these are other humans that are accepting you and they have boundaries and lines, and you look at them as human and accept them for what they can offer you and what they can't, right? But at the end of the day, if someone is having that experience, it isn't on us to define whether or not they're actually having it, because they're the ones that define that. What we can do if we so choose is we can ask them to tell us more about that experience so that we can come a little bit closer to the middle to creating what works for us. Does that make sense? But that's what it is. It's a collaborative effort. It's not one person making the decisions and then the other person just doing it. Both parties have to do what they gotta do. Now, psychological safety. A shared belief held by members of a team that it's okay to take risks, express their ideas and concerns, to speak up with questions, and to admit mistakes, all without fear of negative consequences. Change the word just a little bit there. Negative consequences. And negative consequences, I don't love it. I haven't found a better word for it. I don't love negative consequences because sometimes admitting to mistakes has absolute repercussions, right? We don't create a world where you admit to a mistake and then there's no accountability, so like nothing negative happens to you. No, sometimes we have to be accountable for our actions and we don't like those consequences, right? So psychological safety is not about that, but it's about the fact that by nature of having said a thing, I don't have the negative consequences just because I chose to say it. What tends to happen in places where people don't feel psychologically safe, and again, you'll have a mix. You'll have some people that are like, I say whatever I want. And then you have other people that are like, I don't say anything. Because people who don't say anything don't know what's gonna happen if they finally say something, right? And you'll have people on both sides of the spectrum. You really will have people like, it doesn't matter, I walk in a room, I say what I want. They do what I want. The presence of people that do whatever they want doesn't necessarily mean the absence of people that don't. And you usually have a mix in the room. But the idea is that you definitely want to have people who can say something and feel empowered to say something. Does that make sense? And that's what this room is for, right? That we hope we can get there. Any thoughts about this?
I have a,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't always have to have a consequence. It could just be a judgment that people fear.
Yeah, could be. And in that case, right, that would be the negative consequence for them. Would be like the fear of judgment, that because I've said a thing, because I've said that I need an accommodation, because I said I have a disability, because I said whatever the case may be, then now somebody's gonna judge something. I'm not a team player, I need to have it easier, I don't work as hard, I'm not here for whatever, right? Like, all of those things. So we wanna create spaces where people can feel like they can say something and it's not, you're not gonna immediately go to like judging their character where they're never gonna get from under whatever judgment came in that moment, right? Yeah, okay, so boring part's over. It's all my talking. Got it out of the way in like 10 minutes. Yes.
Can you share your slides? So I can share.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. I had asked for one word to describe what an ideal work culture looks like to you, belonging feels like to you, those sorts of things. And we're gonna take it a step further, and you guys are gonna work in groups, mixed groups, meaning people that you don't like, roles, mixed roles. Like, I don't know where you are, so honor system, but you guys do. You guys know you guys know who doesn't normally work together. You guys can do that, so I'm trusting y'all to do that. But this is what I need you to do. So I ask you like a word, you describe it, you say inviting, you say belonging, you say welcome, you say accepted, you say all those kinds of things. And those things are good, but now let's go deeper with your colleagues to do this. I want you to define what culture of belonging feels like and looks like to you in this space, in this office, however it works culturally for you, in 3 ways. 1, what does it look like? So I want you to think about, you're gonna do this in small groups, but think about everything you can see in your space. What does it look like to you? What do you see when you walk through the door? How is the space arranged? What's on the walls? Is there music? Is there certain lighting? What do you see? People, what do you see, right? First question. Second, what does it sound like? So I'm gonna think of everything you hear. Music, not look, sorry, sound. Senses, my senses. What conversations do you hear? And if you get the sound like bucket, I want you to think in quotables. Like, what do you hear people saying? In the culture of belonging that you described, that you want, that you think about, what do people say in that space? Sometimes, in some organizations, it's as simple as saying hello. Hello. Right? What does it sound like? Try to answer in quotables. How do people give feedback? How do people receive feedback? Like, what do you hear? If you were a fly on the wall listening in to a culture that was one of belonging, what would it sound like to you? And then finally, what does it feel like? These are for all the feels. Yes, it's abstract and touchy-feely. But what does it feel like to you? What does the energy feel like? Like, is it like light and like up, high? Like, does it feel like, oh, you know, is it just kind of meh? Like, what is it for you? How do people feel about coming to work in this space? Yeah, got it? Okay. So I'm gonna have 2 of these per table. Yes.
Clarifying question.
Yes.
Are we only addressing the physicality of coming into our office, or are we addressing those who are working online also? Is that too complex to even ask?
No, either one if it fits in these
Okay.
buckets. So yeah. What does it look like virtually? So one of the ideas is, like, you guys use Teams, right? It looks like GIFs. GIFs? GIFs. Like, I don't think that's right. Looks like GIFs in the morning with my team. Looks like we share pictures of some event I went to. Looks like, does that make sense? Looks like we answer with emojis or not. Looks like we, right? Those sorts of things. That's what it can look like virtually. All right, so in small groups, I have 2, 1, 2, might need more actually. Yes, we don't. No, we can make room. All right, so I have some people with feel, some people with look, some people with sound. I have markers, and we want to get in small groups, so we might want to come up from the back to the front. I have markers, and I want us to define this. What does it sound like? You like to talk in front of people? No? Yeah? No? Yes?
That's not my card.
Here we go. What do we got? What's it look like?
In our group, we all shared our thoughts on what does the belonging mean, look like to us. We like to see people are smelling at the office when we walk in, and also we like to see really the diversity of this office setting when we walk in. And also, to me, I have a designer background. Also, I'm a visual learner and person, so I like to see the fruits of our labor and the creativity work that exhibit in the office. And some of us also express to like see our own project showing. And then last, we also pay attention to the outfit and what people wear at the office. I know sometimes designers or engineers doesn't matter, but some of us we show some fashion that really give us sense of belonging. Hey, I want to join them. And also we also see the positivity in our, like, to give us sense of belonging.
Love it. What do we think about this one? Anyone that really stuck out that you guys really were like, yes, let's do this? Any ones that you heard that were like any in particular stuck out to you?
The fruits of the labor.
Fruits of the labor, yeah. Fruits of the labor. See the things that you guys are working on, like up. Anything else? Yeah.
The fashion one actually stuck out to me because I
Okay.
feel like you could tell a lot of the attitude from design and architecture firms by walking in the office and seeing what everybody is
Yeah.
wearing. Like I think like you get an immediate vibe check. So that was actually something that I consider a lot when I go somewhere for the first time. Including like project offices and things, like I will try and dress.
Clothing allowances.
Okay, we have another looks like? What do we have over here? Who'd like to talk about this one? Looks like.
We said several things. So one is that it looks different, so it's non-homogeneous. Another is that there's space for everyone, so people can find places to habitate throughout the office. That they can make the workstation customized as well. That they spread out, that there's conversations happening throughout the office. That there's places for shared identity as well. And that there are hubs of community, so like the kitchen or, places where people can chat and talk. And then just virtually, people who can share, like sharing gifts, or GIFs, I don't know how you say it, in chats and stuff like that amongst teams. And then different backgrounds in team meetings too.
Yeah. What do we think of these? Any of these stuck out to you in particular? These are all the looks likes. What the office looks like. I mean,
I'd like to address some of the physicality of the office
yes.
and just the environment that we're in, because we're all designers and we're all very conscious of our environment.
Yeah. So having the flexibility, what particular part about the physical space?
I think what I really liked was the concept of hubs.
Yeah.
Because I think that's kind of missing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's sort of a sameness across the office.
Yeah.
When you go from place to place. And it's hard to see people's individuality at their workstations and whatever.
Yeah.
I like the space for everyone. I think that captures a lot of like feeling welcome in a sense that you see often someone's on a phone call with a client and somebody just walks in and wants to be social, and then you see this awkwardness that, oh, I'm in a meeting, be quiet. How do you create that space? The environment, physical environment can have that, but also as an office culture that if you want to have a specific meeting, you can step away and then it lends the culture to continue. So that space for everyone is kind of comes in design and comes in culture.
Yeah, that actually speaks to me also. And so there's this whole concept about neurodivergent spaces, right? Different people work in different ways. I know that at some point we're going to be moving to a new office, having different types of spaces like soft seating, where people can just sit there with their laptops, for 20, 30 minutes throughout the day. That would be really nice for people who just wants to just hang out and do work casually.
Yeah.
Those would be really nice.
Yeah. Now, you guys are gonna keep these, but this is one thing I wanna highlight about this particular conversation, right? So far, the first point. The first point is that when we're thinking about cultures of belonging, a lot of times, the conversation tends to start and stop with what people are doing, how people are talking, some sort of assumption that people aren't being something, right? Aren't being welcoming, aren't being this, aren't being that. And we can expand our view of what it means to build belonging beyond those things. So like one of the things that, for like a simple one, is create a space to create maybe like a gallery walk, right? So if you guys are a design firm and there are folks that design things that can be, I don't know, represented on some piece of wall art, that you can put it up so people can walk past. You can have it on the actual wall, right? With the person's name or the team or whoever contributed to it, right? And that's where you go. You can change it once a quarter, you can change it whenever, right? It doesn't have to be the same thing all the time, but you can change it so that people can see the things that they've contributed to. Does that make sense? And then you guys can see the things that other people have contributed to. So that's one of the things, a physical space in the office, something that can help, right? With people feeling like they belong by seeing themselves in a public space. In terms of fashion and creativity, there's a lot that comes with how people, show their individuality and their creativity through the things that they wear. There are people that maybe some fun people in the office. I don't want to say fun as if like you're fun or not fun, but some people could, and if I were, then I'd be in the not fun group because I hate this idea. I would never do this, but some people would. Which is like, I don't like spirit weeks at school. Can't stand them. Cannot stand them. Never loved them. Oh my gosh. And I have 5 children. Okay, you know how many spirit weeks that is? How many spirit weeks you have when you were sending 5 kids in school? Like, it's crazy, right? Now we have 4 kids in school. We have a 5-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And I don't even like it. Like, they're like, oh, today's purple shirt day. Well, I don't know. I'm sorry. I forgot. Like, I don't know. But anyway, you can do that here. Like, people could do things like get together with somebody that you like, one of the hubs, and we all decided to wear this color today. Or we all decided to like wear all like some monochromatic something or whatever. But like, these are little things that you guys can do with stuff that already exists that doesn't require an entire policy change, right? It doesn't require that. Now, what it might require is like the ability to be creative within professional boundaries in a workspace, right? But it doesn't necessarily require that you like have this whole big policy change and change some systemic thing for someone to show up like creatively, right? With people. All right, let's do the next one. What does it sound like? Who has sound like? What does it sound like? What are the things that you hear? What are the things that we hear in this culture?
Sure. So we didn't focus as much on quotables, and feel free to correct me if I represent anything improperly. But I think our initial discussion revolved around this concept of like non-silence a lot, which maybe sounds relieving. But not feeling the oppressiveness or of like a very silent environment, or feeling like you can't talk because everyone else is quiet. Like just that very unspoken sense of like tenseness or silence, or like being afraid to just in general like start a conversation. And so I think a lot of our suggestions sprung from that. Just like coming in and being able to hear greetings at the start of every day, having casual icebreakers, and also just having a very kind of acknowledgement-based conversation, acknowledging each other, the work that we do every day, and encouraging each other, and also expressing appreciation really directly, like thank you so much for doing this thing. Not saying that we don't do those things already, but just having that being like a constant basis of the interaction that we have with each other all the time. And then also, we're a design firm, so excited conversations and engaged conversations about anything and everything that we work with every day. It could be sustainability, it could be the thought that you're working on, but not just locating those items in like design conversations or like the lunch and learns, but bringing them out as well. And I think that's a consistent thing that we've seen in a lot of discussions, is like how do we bring a design culture into our space and into our everyday conversations.
Yeah. What about this? Anyone, any of these particularly, like any of these jump out to you?
I think similarly, that design conversation.
Do you wanna
is not
share yours
just
now?
a formal, like,
Yeah.
chat of like informal.
Yeah.
Operates should get a fair, I don't think we should.
No, I mean, if they're the same, are they very similar?
That was the most similar.
The most similar
but I
one?
think we should.
Okay, sure.
I like that expression of feeling excited or sounding excited.
Yes, yes. Feeling
Sounds
excited,
excited.
sounding excited, yeah, yeah. Any others?
I like the one where there's non-silent, because people are excited and there's chatter. It's nice.
Yeah.
For me, I always think of a beehive. I would love to walk in the office and just hear the hum of all this different activity, and people working and collaborating. Of course, in order to do that, the conversations typically need to be around something, around the work we're doing together, around our collaboration. And that requires a physical environment in which we can do that. That there are places to put up our work, display our work, to have crit sessions, things of that nature, as opposed to staring at monitors. So there's a little bit of a challenge there for all of us to help create those kinds of spaces and conversations. But I think we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are, well, there are office norms as well.
Yeah.
You know, every office has a loud talker.
Yeah.
Next to you while you're on the phone, you know, and so, and then there's soft talkers as well that really don't like to raise their voice. And there has to be space for both, and luckily for us, we have sort of telephone rooms for privacy and for those who have loud voices. So those things help contribute to a nice collaborative sounding environment where people respect each other for how they work and where they work.
Right.
I was gonna say something similar, and it kinda gets back to what Michelle was saying about a place for everyone. I think there is a lot of discussion around things, but we feel like, everybody has so many meetings during the day that you don't wanna be loud around them or talking and having those meetings, so if there was kind of again, not saying a policy, but a norm where if somebody's having a quiet conversation or a meeting that they need to go somewhere, that would lend itself to more open conversations and not feel like you're interrupting somebody's meeting, because seems like everybody's on a meeting at some point, so.
Alternately, there could be a space that's more dedicated to liveliness, like the kitchen with a pinup space. So there's like this kind of active place that's not next to everybody's computer, where you can go in, you can talk over lunch, you can pin stuff up, and it's okay to make music in that space because it's not right next to somebody's
It's
desk.
active versus concentration space.
So spaces that are quiet, spaces that allow for people to go over if they like to be quiet. I'm a neurodivergent person too, so sometimes certain things overstimulate me very easily. So I've started I have 5 kids, so I figured this out. And one of them was an infant during COVID, so I really figured this out. But noise canceling headphones for myself and things like that when I need them, right? And what that looks like, and communicating to others that me putting noise canceling headphones is not about me distancing myself from you. It's about me managing my nervous system. My nervous system cannot take it, and I need to be able to keep it regulated. And I cannot keep it regulated sometimes if there's a lot happening. And so there are people that actually have those sorts of things, right? And they just need what they need. And creating physical spaces that allow for the sound, right, to be taken into account means a lot, right? So how about you guys? What do you guys have for sounds like? These are great.
Definitely the nice greetings, good morning, how was your weekend? Hey, all of that. And then the gratitude, sharing gratitude, great job, thank you for all that effort. How do we show gratitude? We kind of noted that sometimes it's not something that sounds like, because we're communicating by teams, and so we've got teams messages going out that say, yay, great job, and sharing all of that more visually, actually. We also have that similarity in just active problem solving, where a team is, sharing ideas and brainstorming together, live, and getting feedback and input from everyone to solve problems or talk about options.
Which means also harnessing right on that non-silence piece, in the collaboration space. Do you guys have you ever experienced where you're collaborating with a team, but there's only 1 or 2 people that sort of know the direction, and they're the ones that kind of do it, and everyone else just kind of falls back and says, okay, right? So we want to create a space where those people that fall back and say okay if that's what they want to do. But if they don't want to do that, then they don't. And you can see different cultures that are like that. You can see cultures where people are choosing to be you know what, it's okay. I'm like that sometimes. Sometimes I choose to not have an opinion. I choose to only give my energy and engage in things that I really feel if I really can take it or leave it, whatever you choose is fine with me. I really don't care. I'm not a person that's gonna say something. But if I do feel very strongly about something, I'm going to say it, right? And so that's also what it might sound like. You'll actually hear people saying well, what about this? I know this is the direction, but what about this? And then what do you hear in response? Tell me more about that. That's what you want to hear. That's how you want to respond to somebody in a group conversation, especially if somebody is offering a different way of doing something, right? Sometimes we don't want to offer that because sometimes the person will be we got it handled, right? Thanks, but we already. That shuts down the non-silence culture that you guys have stated that you want to hear.
I think we bounced upon that
Yeah.
for the Zoom meeting
Yeah.
method of approval. So you ask a question, you get this, what does that mean?
Uh-huh.
Is that good, or does that stop the conversation and we just move on? Is that a positive affirmation? What does that actually mean when you're remote?
Yes. And if you have established that as a norm, which some people do, they use emojis, right? And use stickers and use the things in Teams to say it. And to a certain extent, that could be helpful. but things can always swing too far in one direction or another. Always. The best of ideas can swing too far in one direction or another. So it's always worth asking, and maybe it's time to ask that question of like, hey, this is how we look to see if everyone's on board in a Zoom meeting. Like, is this working for us? Is this getting us the outcome that we want, which is feedback and right collaboration? But like, does that do what we want to do considering what we said we wanted to hear? Because we can't hear that. And honestly, a thumbs up is like, there's only one thumbs up. So is it like, or like, you know what I mean? Like those are two different ways to communicate something, right? And it's like, well, it's not down. You know what I mean? Like you can't really gauge that per se. So there could be other ways to do it. Like, and also, the other thing, and there's always this balance, which is why it's a conversation, which one of the healthiest things that you guys can do as a group is learn to have the conversation. Not as if you don't, not trying to be, but like, exercise the muscle of having the conversation, right? Which is, we have a lot of people, we have meetings, and we actually don't have time for everyone to tell us whether it's this or this. We literally, like, we don't have to, there's not enough minutes in the day for me to hear how excited you are about this plan, okay? But maybe the thumbs up doesn't quite work as well because it's so, like, monotone. So maybe instead of that, we go to GIFs, and you find some GIFs in the library that you like that represent your things almost like emojis, but like just because they're fun. Well, they're fun to me, I don't know. Right? To where if someone is like this, my GIF would be like, you know what I mean? And if someone's like, nah, I was like, okay. That would give you a little bit more data, yes, than just a thumbs up or whatever. And you can't hear that, but if you're an Office fan like me, I can hear every Office GIF. Every single one. The Office, the old one, yes, everyone. I can hear all the Schitt's Creek ones. I can hear them in my ear because I know what was being said at that moment, that 1 second clip was captured. That's how much I love it, okay? Okay, so one of the other things that I heard, also being mindful, right? It's fair to be mindful of your barriers and your limitations. So like, I heard this one, which was excited conversations about design and architecture. So in the world of like TikToks and short form content, it doesn't have to be like incredibly produced or anything. Someone can take a video, like if you guys are here and you've designed something and you've used some design principle, I'm not a designer, so please be gracious with whatever it is that I say, and I hope you understand what I'm trying to say, because my language may not match, okay? But there's some design principle or concept that you used, that you're really excited about, that like you spend time thinking about in your off time, and there's something that you can like share with the group about this principle and make like a 3-minute video about how excited you are about this and share it, right? Those are things that you can hear to get conversations going. And you can share those broadly that other people can consume in their own time. Does that make sense? Because like everyone's calendar is, this is not a thing where everybody can just be up in a room talking and having fun. Like it's not a thing all the time, right? So you could start to do things like that to have ways for people to share what they want with the group. And there might be other people in here that don't know about that principle, so it also becomes a learning opportunity for someone else. In addition to starting conversations about things that people are excited about that you might not have heard any other time. Does that make sense? Little things that we can do that don't require you to overhaul a bunch of stuff in order to make it happen. Okay, last one, feel like. What does it feel like when you come into work?
So our team want to feel like we're happy to see each other, especially on a Monday morning. That you're coming into the office, you're genuinely happy to see your coworker, maybe have a small conversation, and that really gets to feel like you're not just coming here to work, but you're also here to connect with other people to really learn who they are. And it goes to some of the team, the C team and the sound team, like really seeing a smile on someone else's face and really like hearing someone say hello and having a small conversation, it means a lot to us. And we also want to feel like we're an exciting design firm, like small design conversation, like what we just talked about. Personally, my experience is it doesn't even need to be like a full hour-long conversation. One time I got, Jalo told me how to build this exterior wall and what is the most efficient way to do it and how that fuse some design decisions that can be made, and I was excited about it for like a whole day and excited to try it on my own project. And we also want to feel like we are trusted and appreciated by our team. I think a lot of it goes to everyone, but a lot goes to some younger professional like myself. Just hearing that your team trusts you, wanting to know your opinion instead of just asking you to follow direction feels great. And also hearing your team verbally or just in writing express their appreciation to you means a lot too. Also, understanding of each other, Sine mentioned it, really getting to know each other more and having that trust and appreciation in your teammate really helps carrying out the collaboration. Sometimes work can be misunderstood, but with the understanding and the trust, you can explain and work it out together. And also to a lot of the young professionals, we want to be visible and noticed. Sometimes you're not really doing the most glamorous job on the project, and even like the smallest effort, you want to be noticed and visible to your team and to everyone. And it feels like our job is a learning environment that you're constantly improving yourself and learning something new from everyone around you. And also, we want to feel like we have options of and freedoms of choice in a sense of like having options of workspace, where you wanted to work, how you want to work. Also ties back to a lot of discussion about like what kind of environment do I work the best at, and now that we kind of have assigned seat, like do we have the option to sort of move around to really like put myself in the environment that I perform the best at, collaboration spaces, quiet space, louder social space, etc.
Yeah, thank you. What do we think? What are we thinking? Liking it? Things stand out to you? Anything stand out?
I think the
Yeah.
design comment stands out and the options of where our workspace. Because I keep hearing it over and over. We're all a bunch of designers and we're all excited about it. And I'd love to be able to share that.
Yeah, to be able to tap in. I hear a lot of that. It's very interesting. It's a consistent, like, it's a consistent thing, feeling across the board of like embodying design. Like you are a designer. Like this is the design part. Like this is what you guys do, and not only do it in like this is just what I do for my work, but this is also what I embody, right? Like I bring myself into my designs, which yes, because they're so creative, right? And they're things that you're thinking of. And one of the things that's different between this and maybe some other industries is that the thing that you produce is a piece of you. Would you agree? Right? When you're thinking of the design and you're making the decisions and you're doing the things, like there's a piece of you that you're leaving here. And so really being able to capture that in the space that you work, to hold space for the fact that I'm leaving a piece of myself here and what I'm doing, and particularly this work/creative outlet, right? That's what I'm hearing through the space, and really to be intentional about honoring that, and to not, to move a little bit more toward that versus some things that we might stereotypically think of corporate culture, is what I'm hearing. Is that fair? What else do we have about feels like? Yes.
When I think about belonging and what does that feel like,
Yeah.
this point that says understanding each other really like captures a lot in it.
Yeah.
Because we live around a very dynamic setup. Like our whole life is very dynamic. We come to work every day. We have a different day every day.
Yes.
We have different emotions, different perspectives of things happening in our lives that we bring to work, and we spend most of our time at work, the time that we're awake, right, or in the daytime. But there's also projects. Different projects have different challenges, different phases have different challenges, different clients have different challenges, and it changes. So I could be me in a different setting on one day versus me in a different setting on a deadline day, a different me, and it changes. So and the ability to understand each other and what we all might be going through. Just because I have mom sitting right here next to me, if I have a deadline for a project meeting coming up, she jumps in to say, hey, how can I help? Because I know that this is coming up and I know you're busy with the deadline. She sits next to me and we really tap into each other because she understands me when I'm sitting next. So having that understanding of each other really makes you feel like you belong there.
Yes, it does.
I want to echo to the Michelle's comment. So, we are busy, right, all the time. So typically we use an email as our communication tool. So sometimes you just sort of, put the very simple sentence to send your coworkers, and coworkers misunderstood, right? And sometimes they slap on the word the people put it in, right? But even sometimes you just go approach the person and say, have a 5-minute conversation, solved, right? But sometimes the email exchange create the miscommunication and unhealthy debate, right? Which is completely unnecessary, right? So I think that's why I just want to add a thing on top of Michelle's comment.
Yeah. And definitely addressing that and asking the question. So there are some people, and there's been colleagues that I've been with, and sometimes it's like a quick slap or something, I just state the thing. I don't state the thing with an emoji or an exclamation point to make sure the person knows I'm happy to be stating the thing, right? I just state it. And she and I had a conversation, I was like, hey, so sometimes now, I know how it lands with people. It's really important though, right, to also be aware of how things land. So we don't always want to depend on someone coming to us. We also want to understand and learn how things that we do land so that we could go and connect with that person. So when I did that, I went to her and I said, hey, I tend to, when it's quick and we're trying to have a quick back and forth or trying to get something done, I tend to just state the thing like this. Is that okay with you? This is how I'm this is what I'm thinking. I'm just kind of in a work mode, I'm kind of head down. So I'm just answering so fast to just try to get this done. Is that okay with you? And she goes, oh my gosh, yes, I do the same thing. And what's interesting about that is she and I were both likely spending time adding extra hearts and emojis and stuff to make sure that each other knew that we were happily saying things, and neither one of us wanted to do it. And both of us got to get to the point where oh really? I can just say it? Just say it. I'm just gonna say it. Can I just say it? I was like, yes. Oh my gosh, just say it. I don't feel like scrolling through my recent used emojis to find the right one. You know what I mean? To let you know how I don't have time for that, quite frankly. Don't really always want to do it. So I would love to get to know individuals such that I know how I can communicate with that person. Now there are some people that I might not know as well, those sorts of things that I am meaning to be friendly, I intend to be friendly, so I will do things to try to make sure my messages come across as friendly. Does that make sense? Because that's my intention. But once a person knows me and we've had that conversation, then she knows Krystina's always intending to be friendly. We're just not choosing extra emojis to say that. We know that. Got it. Check. Done. Let's just, do you know what I mean? Let's just talk. That's about getting to know people. And that's the level to which people understand you. And so again, one of it, the onus is on me as I learn myself in a workplace to say, hey, how did that land? Because when I do this thing, sometimes it lands well and sometimes it doesn't. Was this a time that it landed well for you or didn't? What can I do? And if you're on the receiving end of something, to be able to say, hey, this didn't land well, right? What can we do? What's the other last one, feeling? What's the last feeling? What does it feel like?
Yeah, so our group talked about how belonging feels like everyone knows each other's name.
Yeah.
So it helps to go to each other's desks and say good morning, hi, hello, and just notice everyone's presence. And another thing that we mentioned is that the truly really supports you and trusts you to watch your own back. So if you were to take PTO, you feel like you're covered in that aspect. And then another thing that we mentioned is that we have recognition of your own work, and the team really recognizes your responsibilities and how great of a coworker and team player you are without being unknown. And yeah, that kind of just adds on to the factor of belonging and just feeling that sense of
What do we think? What do we think?
We talked
bit about how our office feels a little transient. Like, because there's always people from other offices coming in and speaking. Those of us who are working on UCSF, we're not here super frequently. So I don't know if you're my coworker or if you're visiting from another office sometimes. So yeah, it's just that goes with the sense of belonging. Like, do I would say hello, or you know, like what do I do here? Have you also worked here for 4 years and I just never so that's one of the things that we talked about. And then also some of us are working on other projects outside of this office on our own, and so that goes with some of the recognition of other people in the office not knowing your big lift elsewhere that's happening.
Yeah. Anything else we got? What do we think about this exercise so far? Yes.
I think one little item that we had listed was, sounds like, invitations to have lunch and like casual lunch in the office, so that was one.
Yeah.
I haven't heard. It's nice to invite people to lunch, it's nice
Yeah.
to have a casual lunch.
When I was newer at an organization, it was really helpful for me. I had somebody that used to invite me to break. I was newer and I wouldn't take breaks. I would forget. Also, this is pre-knowing that I was a neurospicy human being, right? And some people don't like you neurospicy. I still embrace it. But this is how I feel. But I would just sit and work and work and work and work and work and never take a break. I do that still. I can sit and work at my computer for 8 hours straight, not eat or drink. It's a hyper focus and it happens. It was really helpful for me early on for someone to kind of tap me and say, hey, we're gonna go out and have a break right now, right? It was really helpful for that, for me to have that. Perfect. Okay. So the title of this was The Power of One. So we have, right, we've just spent a lot of time really talking about and hearing what our colleagues feel about what would be a place of belonging, right? What it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like, more so than just kind of saying the words, but really thinking about like defining that, what that means. The idea here in this particular work is that systemic changes aren't always immediately possible. So this conversation is not ignoring or any of that there may be some larger policy things. But what we're doing in this conversation is focusing on what individuals can do, what you can do and how you can show up, right? So for example, when somebody models inclusive behavior, right, like asking someone's opinion or saying how did that land with you or that kind of thing, other people can see what that looks like in practice and model it. You can do that. You don't need any other role, other authority. You don't need a certain amount of seniority. You don't need any of that. You don't need any of that. These are all things that you can do, right? And small and consistent actions are what builds trust over time. Even in this space, right? The small things, the little things are what builds trust. And so we want to focus on those. There's some big things that we can do, but to be honest, if big initiatives come before trust comes, then usually those big initiatives are met with, yeah, right. So that was a waste of time. So they wrote it, but they're not going to do it. What you want to do is build trust over time, or at the very least at the same time, have this level of consistency to move forward. So think of a time here somewhere, and if a couple people can say it, where you felt that you belonged somewhere, here or otherwise, that somebody said something. They said something, some small thing, and it made you feel like you belonged. Anybody think of a time? No?
There's one in the back.
What do we got?
Well, a simple one, but that we use a lot, is when somebody tells me and asks me that they're so happy
gone from PTO for a while, and someone says, "I'm so happy that you're back."
Or
So-
when somebody returns to the office after being gone for 3 years.
or when someone returns after being gone for 3 years. Any others? What else do we have?
If received a compliment before, somebody told me, "We need more of you." And just that sense that you're doing the right thing is,
Yeah.
should continue doing what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
When I joined HDR, it was during COVID, and we were all like, I think most of us just knew each other through the Zoom screens. And HDR, the holiday parties came, and everybody was stay put in quarantine. But HDR did a very cute thing, I think, where the elves showed up at our doorsteps. I had realized the elves came at our doorstep with bags of goodies, and with a distance that was goodies at the doorstep.
Yes.
And just showed that we are still here,
Yes.
and you're still welcome. And not having met most of the coworkers, and that was like the first physical interaction with the coworkers, I think you instantly felt you belong.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
Being invited to lunch or coffee.
Yes. Being invited to lunch or coffee. Would you like to just go grab a coffee with me? Go grab lunch with me. Yeah? Okay. So, we're gonna take all of the things that we've talked about, your looks, your sees, your feels. No. Look and see is the same sense, people. Look, hears, sounds, feels. And we're gonna think about the individual things that we can do, right, in some specific spaces to get us closer to all the things you've just said, yes? All of the ways that it looks, sounds, feels. All of the things. Now I have a few, these areas where what I want us to do is go around and write down things that we individually can do. So the question is, what can I do during regular workplace interactions? That's going to be the answer. What can I do? What can I do during a meeting? Doesn't matter where I am, doesn't matter my role, doesn't matter if I have leadership, don't, whatever the case may be. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do in regular workplace interactions, like when someone walks in the door, I see someone for the first time after a weekend, what can I do? Does that make sense? So the questions, where I am. So we're gonna walk around, there's enough markers, I believe, for everybody. What can you do when it comes to giving recognition? One of the things, an idea, when it comes to projects, is if you guys have some sort of project management tool or something like that, some kind of task tool, I don't know how you guys manage like tasks and work and collaborative work, but you can add a task on there that reminds you to do this. Sometimes in the hustle and bustle of things, people don't necessarily say thank you or give gratitude, not because they don't want to, but because they're thinking about the next thing, particularly if you have deadlines coming up, you're in a stressful environment, you're trying to meet goals, you're having a lot of meetings, those kind of things. If you are a person that kind of gets in that and turns that task on like that, you might need a reminder that tells you this. I use a reminder in my own relationship, okay? Comes on my phone every single day at 10 o'clock. Why? Because I have 5 kids, I have a lot of things, I think of things all the time that I'm thankful for. I don't always say them out loud, right? But I do think of them, but I want to be intentional. And I can't, obviously, with the way that things are going and the way my brain is working at the moment, I can't rely on my good intentions to say that out loud to the person who needs to hear it. So I need to set reminders for myself. That might be something that needs to happen, because otherwise it feels like nobody cares, and that might not be true. Might not be true. So there's enough markers, I believe, for most people. That was a weird statement, huh? think there's enough markers for most of you. Let's write what we can do individually. Things that you can do during meetings, during cultural celebrations, during workplace interactions, providing support. What are things that you can do? And if you come across one that someone's already written down, you don't have to write it again. You can just put like a star next to it, something like that, like a check mark next to it, if you like second that thing. Things that you can do. Whatever you can do during your meetings, during workplace interactions, all the things. 50 things. 50 things that we can do as individuals to contribute to the things that we wrote at the very beginning of the session, yeah? That's the goal. The understanding is that to create this culture that we want, right? In the space that I come in and when I get asked to do this kind of work, a lot of times we go directly to all of these really big things that we need to change. We need to change policy, we need to change this, we need to do all these things. And it's not that we don't need to do those things, but there are things we can do immediately, which are the examples all here. I also get questions when I come into a space of people that say, but I don't have a leadership role. I'm not a manager, I'm not a director, I'm not those kinds of things. I don't have any power. I don't have any power to impact the culture here. I don't have any power to create belonging. I can't do that. I'd like to prove that that's not true. Because these are all the ways, right, that individuals, regardless of where they sit in an organization, does have the power to impact culture. We do have an onus, we have an expectation of our leadership at times and things like that, and helping to make sure that the tone is set for us to do those things. But we have the power to do these little things, right, that impact how we work together. So, we're gonna keep these in fun. If you guys want to have homework, it would be amazing. You guys can make this your first wall art, but like design it with the words. Send it out as reminders. But you guys can have this with the words of things that you guys can do. And I like to do this, and I like for you all, when I'm with organizations, I like the organization to write these down because I feel that whatever you guys write down is probably way more relevant to your culture than anything I could think of because I don't work here. Right? So these are things brought by you for the benefit of you that you can have and keep this and disseminate this however you'd like to. But if you need a first little thing of some wall art, here you go. You guys can take these, make them nice, and put them on your walls. Now, I don't want to pretend, right, we have these conversations and it all starts and everything is lovely and lollipops and rainbows, because it's not. Good job, Chris. That was wonderful. Way to go. Way to go. Way to go. Got all my business in the street, everything. Look at this. Okay.
Do you like Canva?
Do I like Canva? Right? Yeah, because I'm not a real designer, guys. I mean, just make things look decent for time, but I don't do this. Alright, here we go. Because things are not always lollipops and rainbows, sunshine and lollipops, whatever I choose to say at the time. I wrote sunshine at that time because it was raining. No, it's not always sunshine. Giving clear feedback. Clear is kind. What Brene Brown says, clear is kind. What that means is clear is kind in terms of feedback and how we talk to people. Being clear is kind. The opposite of that would be giving indirect feedback or hoping that people pick up the hints that you're dropping down or hope that people read the things, or when you have people that you have experienced people who may have passive aggressive tones and things like that, that is not kind. Clear is kind. Right? And so there are times that you have to give feedback to people, right? Or engage in a conversation that isn't all amazing and wonderful and great. Okay, and sometimes you have to say hard things. We all have to say hard things. And being clear in saying the hard things is kind. Does that make sense? So there's a way that we can do this. while also fostering the belonging that we're all talking about here. But I don't want to leave without giving us this last piece, because I don't want to assume that everything is just like, oh my gosh, now we say hi and everything's fine. Right? No. Because sometimes deadlines get missed. Sometimes, right, people may not perform or do a thing that they need to do. And that has to be addressed as well. Does that make sense? Now, how do we also address that while facilitating the culture of belonging that we're talking about? So this is how we're going to do it. So we're going to give clear feedback. Okay? Clear. Clear means connect. We're going to start with connecting. So we're going to start with positive intent. The person means well. We're going to assume that. You can say, I know you meant well, or you can say, I think you know, I think you meant well. I say, I think someone meant well when I don't know for sure if they did. You know what I mean? Sometimes I know people's intentions, like sometimes I don't. Like maybe you did mean for that to come out like that, but I'm gonna think maybe you didn't. And we can have a conversation. You know what I mean? So I think you meant well. I think you meant well. Then you're gonna focus on listening to understand, not listening to talk. Not listening to reply, but listening to understand. Then explore, so be curious and ask questions about this feedback. It'll make sense. I'll give you an example. Acknowledge, A is for acknowledge. So you're gonna validate that perspective or whatever perspectives. Like, I hear you, I hear what you say. And then respond. See, there's a lot of steps that come before the responding. Yes? A lot of steps. The connection step, the listening step, the asking questions step. Sometimes we skip this and we go straight to offering our opinions about the situation and we didn't ask enough clarifying questions to actually be constructive. Acknowledging the other person's perspective, then we get to share. Does that make sense? There's a lot of steps before we get there. And sometimes we skip it. We skip one or all of these and get straight to the let me tell you. But when you want to do that, and it doesn't have to be fat, it doesn't have to be a long conversation. It could be like, I think you meant well when this happened. This is how this landed. The person listens, ask clarifying questions, tell me more about that. If you need to ask clarifying questions, unless you understand. If you feel like you understand, then you can say, oh yes, I can see how that landed like that. This is what we can do, what do you think we should do? That's where you get here. Does that make sense? So, connect, listen, explore, acknowledge, and then respond, right? So this is how it goes, as an example. Work style differences. Connect, I appreciate how detailed and thorough your work is. You're paying attention, listening. Pay attention to their workflow preferences. This is like if we're talking about work style differences. Maybe they say whatever their preferences are, you pay attention to them. If we're talking about project updates, how would you prefer to receive project updates? How would you prefer to perceive feedback? What works for you? Acknowledge, I see how our approaches to the deadlines have been creating stress. I can see that. Let's set up brief check-ins to handle that. Does that make sense? It doesn't take away the truth of what's happening, which is that we're having some differences or difficulty with the way that we're working together. I appreciate this. I know this about you. If that's true for you, right? I know this about you. I'm listening to you. What would you like? I'm asking what you need, right? I can see now I can see how we got here. Does that make sense? I understand. I can see how we got here. What do we do now? What can we do? Does that make sense? All right. So, we're gonna have just a couple minutes more group work. I know. I told you guys I'm a teacher, so I don't know. But we're almost there. So here we go. I'm gonna put 2 of these scenarios per area. We're gonna split up again. We're gonna look at these Alright, I'm pass this one down. This one might be best with pens because it's just piece of paper. You're gonna work with each other to think about how you guys can respond in these scenarios. Using this as a model, you don't have to exactly follow it, right? But it might help you as a model. What are some ways? The impact first. The impact. We got the same kind of similar groups to our things, except there's 8 groups. Impact. Listening. What does listening look like? Or similar groups. I have 8 groups this time instead of 6.
Well, or just grab a chair.
Get some chairs.
Just sit in there.
I had a clarifying question. Scenario number 2 is about addressing missed deadlines, and the question was, am I referring to an individual or team? When it comes to their individual or team, whichever feels the most helpful or relevant for you to address. So if it's a team thing for scenario 2, then feel free to use that lens. If it's an individual for scenario 2, feel free to use that lens. How are these scenarios going for you? We're gonna wrap up. I want to share them with, I want you guys to be able to share these with each other. But how is it going? What came up for you in the process of thinking about how to give feedback? So this is us giving negative feedback, potentially negative feedback or difficult feedback to somebody. What are you noticing about this way versus ways that maybe you have experienced?
It's a lot more engaging and accepting of other people's thought processes.
Yeah.
Which is more inclusive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would spell clear differently. I would put acknowledge before the
I
explore.
know, right? That's what happens. The
CLA.
limitation of, what are these things? Acronyms, I think, right? The limitations, yes.
I think it provides good structure to that conversation.
Yeah.
Other than just coming to a stop, like
Mhm.
awkward silence or a conflict.
Yeah.
It's less reactive, more thoughtful.
Yes, less reactive for sure. For sure. It gives people, sometimes when you're having these kind of conversations, we're all human beings, right? And one of the things that is important to talk about that you could spend a whole other time talking about is how we respond. Like when we use the word trigger, it gets used a lot. But what's really important to understand is like sometimes we have interactions with people that do trigger like physiological responses, right? You get sweaty, heart races a little bit more, and people may get flushed in their cheeks. These are like parasympathetic nervous system responses that are not controllable, right? And so what happens is having a framework like this and engaging in a conversation like that gives us a chance to tell our bodies we're not being chased by a bear. We're just having a conversation. Does that make sense? Sometimes we engage in conversations like this, like we are being chased by a bear. Like there is a lion and he is out to get us. And we have to give ourselves literal time and space to be like, not a bear. I am fine. That's a human. Will not eat me. This is a conversation I'm having. It's a conversation. And so that's what something like this can provide. Also, if you're the one giving feedback and you haven't done it, for me, sometimes I get like my stomach bubbles, like just, I'm like, like all the things. So again, it helps give us something to ground ourselves in like, we're okay, we can say this. And sometimes it is hard in the beginning, right? Because you're not used to it. But one of the things is that this does feel like a lot of steps. It can, anytime you're introduced to something. But this can happen very quickly. Like this can happen in a 2-minute conversation. The other conversation where your nerves and the trigger and the brain and the nerves are driving, when they're in the driving seat, that can turn into a confrontation that lasted 30 minutes, plus another meeting with your supervisor next week, plus another meeting with so-and-so the other week, and that 2-minute conversation that could have followed this plan, potentially, right, lasts 2 weeks. Because we didn't give ourselves space to be like it's a conversation, it's not there. It's a conversation. Even if it's hard. And that takes time, because you also have to understand that when you are talking to people and having difficult conversations, we don't know the difficult conversations they've had in the past. Does that make sense? So also recognize they're not always responding to you in the moment. They're responding to something that they have been through that you may not have anything to do with. So we also want to have things like this to give people space to have the conversation with us. If you've never had feedback from me and you've only had feedback in a really negative way, when I come to you like this, you still might come at me like I'm a bear. Does that make sense? What I know though for myself is I'm not a bear. And if you're treating me like a bear, there's something that happened there, right? That is like prompting you to do that. And I'm curious about that because I know I'm not a bear. I'm not defensive about it, I'm curious about it. Because I want to know how I can show up for you in the way that I'm intending. So I'm going to lean into that aspect of it. Does that make sense? Just because we do this, other people come in with their own stuff, and it's not always what we're doing or saying, it's what other people are coming into. But if we hold space for human beings to be human beings, I would hope that if I respond to someone like a bear, they'd be like, oh, so this is, okay. Tell me more about this. And they would pause and give me a chance to like go through this. Does that make sense? That's what I need as a human being in some situations. That's what we need as human beings in some situations. So that's what this can do. You don't have to memorize it, like things like that, but just the example of having something to ground yourself in so that we all can have the conversation we want to have and we can finish the conversation, even difficult ones. Does that make sense? Yes? Cool. All right. So we're getting ready to wrap up here. And I just have a few questions. And if you guys have something to jot down something with, and you want to write these things down for yourselves, but anybody can kind of take these. If I could have maybe one volunteer or so. What's one thing that you'll take away from today? What do you think? Anything particularly intriguing to you? Something I was like, ooh, I can use that. Yeah.
I like the reminder for gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love it, because otherwise I'm just always, my brain is always somewhere else. I have to be reminded to slow down and say thank you. Anybody else? Any others? Yeah.
I'm definitely going to remember the discussion about floats today, because that was, but I think the discussion of, like a team could come in and all wear white or something like that. And it was the idea that you can, you know, within your own context, create a space for individuality. You know, even in a corporate environment, something small like that, I think is a really powerful idea that could be carried forward in many different ways. And so it's definitely something that I want to do.
And I want to add to that, piggyback on it, and it's not just the potential of a team do that, which is great, but also as an individual, everyone should feel comfortable wearing their own cultural heritage or native dress to wear, whatever that is. We've had Diwali in the office, and on those days, all of those who are of Indian or South Asian descent, they wear their most beautiful clothes, fabrics, and textiles, texture. You should feel free to do that any day you do. We don't have to do it just once a year.
Scott's kilt was really nice.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, speaking from my own experience, I'm a Black American, and there have been spaces like during Black History Month, for example, that I have not felt like I can wear anything that says like nothing. And so to be in a space, right, where it's like, oh, it's that month, and I choose to wear an African print or a Pan-African colors or something like that, then it's allowed. You know, I mean, there's a lot of different cultural celebrations and ways in which we express our culture through dress, which is such an important part of culture, right? And it's dress and it's hairstyles and just small ways like that they can go very far to know that in your space you can celebrate that and visibly celebrate it because it's something that you're proud of and something that you want to do, versus feeling like I can't do that here because I felt that way for sure. So I think very powerful.
Yeah, another thing I really want to encourage everybody to do is give recognition. One of the things, you had a board up there, giving recognition, and it made me think about some past experiences, and who here knows the name Jim Lee? Well, I would have expected Sangman and Jill maybe to say something.
It's pre-candy, that's different candy time, but that's.
Okay, so whenever there was a win, a project win, he had a duck whistle, and he would walk around the office from studio to studio, quack, quack, and he'd quack duck, and he would yell aloud about this win we just got. And this studio was, yay, and they'd go over to that studio, and yay, congratulations. Another firm that I was at, they hit the gong. And so it could be at 1:30 in the afternoon, and so what if you're on the phone with the client? It was a celebration of a big win, and it was recognition of that team's success. On the spot, at the moment. Sangman just walked in. Sangman, do you remember Jim Leak?
No.
No, okay.
So, but now they have something similar at the ICDC, where there's a cowbell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was one of those celebrations. People brought the dollars down and they'll ring the bell.
Each studio can come up with their own, each team, each person can come up with their own. But we should be giving recognition. Look at this increment 5 deadline, you know, just finished service time. What an accomplishment. And I know you had a celebration after Thursday, but we should be patting each other on the back.
Now, as you look at number 2, just for you personally, right? Not for everyone, but what you do personally is if you see anything, and again, I'm gonna provide this stuff to you, but think of anything that you might want to start doing, anything you might want to stop doing, and anything you want to continue doing, things that you already do. Meaning, you already have asked people to coffee, and you didn't realize that more people would love to be asked to coffee. So you're like, I'm gonna keep doing that for more people, right? You already send, thank yous to people. You're like, I didn't know that people wanted that, but I see what we need. I'm gonna keep doing those things, right? I only initiate conversations with certain people, but I'm gonna continue initiating conversations with more people. Whatever that is for you. And the goal today, right, if I go all the way back to the beginning, it was to leave you guys inspired, motivated, and empowered to take this culture that you guys want to have into 2025. This is the time where we all think of all things and we're gonna work out every day for 30 days. Right? But what we can do is some of the stuff here. So if anybody has anything, is there anything they're excited about for 2025 and the rest of 24, we're almost into the last of the holidays. What are you excited about in terms of feeling joy, taking something from this space into your work, even tomorrow?
Stop crying.
That's February.
Yeah.
I wanna take time to read all of these,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I look forward to reading all of these
Yeah. Yeah.
comments. Sure.
Yeah.
Keep them up in the office.
Thank you.
In each area.
Yeah.
I think for myself, it's realizing that this doesn't, all of these ideas don't just pertain to perhaps small group of people you work with immediately, that you can exercise this all across the office.
I think this is the first time I'm experiencing the studio do something like this. And I'm excited about taking this and developing this further. I think there's so much of this conversation that has started, getting to know each other has started. I think this just growing this together into the next year, this is just the beginning.
I would completely second that. Earlier you asked, what did you like about the fact that we are having this itself is very good, but you will admit that this is just the beginning. There are so many other conversations we can have, and some of the growth, but I hope we continue to have these.
Yeah. It's amazing. survey. I would love to have your feedback. I'd love to hear things that you loved, things that you didn't love, things that you would love to add, things that you would love to take away. I'm open to all of it always. And I'm really, really excited. I'm excited for you guys. I love, one of my favorite parts, honestly, is to sit back and like listen to the conversations and let you work. I think sometimes when you have third parties come in, we come in as an expert of whatever, things that, I know some things, you guys know design things, I don't know those things. And I sort of don't like to come in and just tell you the things. In my opinion, in my experience, my favorite part, honestly, is just creating a space for you guys to pull out what you already have. These things I didn't tell you, you already have them, which means that you have the makings to create the culture that you want. You already have it. The only thing that is needed at times is the structure around it and the space to do it, right? But other than that, it's really about, for me as a consultant, it's really about me bringing out what you guys already have and just kind of putting little guardrails or little frameworks here and there and just letting you guys go. So thank you guys for your participation. Thank you for all of the things that you wrote, all of the stuff that you provided, talking for, this was an incredible 2 hours. And it's so energetic for like the end of a Monday on a rainy day. But we are like acting like it's sunshine outside, and I really, really appreciate it. So like, let's give us all a round of applause. Like,